Yeah, but people have a problem understanding and accepting this. Like, even I was talking to someone, preparing for this interview. I was giving the example with Poponin, who had that experiment with human. You tell it. You know it better.
Well, if I understand the experiment that you're
human DNA, yeah,
you're talking about, what the scientists did was they took particles of light that are called photons. And if our viewers are not familiar with a photon, it's the stuff that atoms are made of. So the scientists were able to take the building blocks of atoms that our world, our bodies are made of, and they put them into a vacuum. So they took all the air out of this container, and they measured to see where are they, what is the distribution, and it was random. They were everywhere, just what they expected. The next part of the experiment is they took human DNA and placed the human DNA into the vacuum with the photons. Now, to even think to do that experiment tells me that science
had a question.
Is on the edge of a big discovery, to even think to do that. So what happened was they put the DNA in with the photons, then they said, what is the distribution?
What effect do we have on the stuff our world is made of? Conventional science says we have no effect. But here's what the experiment is showing. All of a sudden, the photons align themselves along the DNA. Now, that is an amazing experiment, because what it's saying is this. It's saying that the stuff you are made of, your DNA, has a direct effect on the stuff the world is made of, the photons of the atoms of matter. And that is the first time it was shown under controlled conditions in the laboratory. Very controversial, very interesting.
So that was the laboratory. The question is, how far does that effect extend into the real world? And this is where the scientists now are doing experiments to see if it's only localized in one place, how far something like this actually goes. So that was an example, and you were giving that example. But yes, it is difficult for many people to embrace the idea that we could possibly influence the healing of our bodies, or that we could possibly influence the peace in a community or the peace between nations. But the experiments are showing very, very clearly that this is in fact a possibility under the right conditions. And the reason it's possible, it all goes back to the proof that we are in fact connected by a field of energy. 1944, Max Planck, a Nobel Prize winning physicist, he made a statement. It was so profound. He said, what we see as matter doesn't really exist the way we think it exists. He said, behind everything we see as matter, he said, there is a conscious and intelligent mind that is the matrix. That was his word, the matrix of all matter. John Wheeler, Princeton University, bore that out through his experiments. John Wheeler said that the universe is not complete, that it is us. The act of consciousness is constantly interacting with the fields around us, creating our reality, essentially. The good things that happen, the bad things that happen.
So we can actually create our life in every moment, and we can change everything that happens to us in every second?
Theoretically, I think it's possible. The problem is that we say with our words, I would like to change, but in our hearts and our minds, we have the fear and the doubt that prevents that change. And this is where the real workshop of life begins.
You said at some point that we can literally move mountains. And you've been around the world, you've seen many, many powerful things and many proofs with your own eyes. How can we do that? This is another very strong, thing that most of us wouldn't think it's possible. We all think it's literally impossible.
What quantum physics is now suggesting, and what our most cherished indigenous and ancient spiritual traditions have always said, is the world around us is nothing more, nothing less than a mirror of what we accept as our reality. So if we accept the suffering, if we accept the hurt and the pain, if we accept war as the reality, then we can certainly continue to experience that. When we claim the cooperation and the peace that is actually the model that nature is based upon, then that becomes a new reality. The key is to collectively, this is a collective choice that we must have, and that I think this is what we're exploring now.
There are 2 satellites above the northern hemisphere. Every 30 minutes, they send a signal to the scientists of the Earth, and they tell us how strong the magnetic field of the Earth is. Now, the magnetic field of the Earth is important. The magnetic field of the Earth connects all life. It sustains all life. There is no them and us when it comes to the magnetic field of the Earth. There's only we. Every blade of grass, every hamster, every goldfish, every dog, every cat, every CEO of every corporation, every leader of every nation is connected to the magnetic field of the Earth. One day scientists were looking at the information and all of a sudden, boom, look at this. They'd never seen the magnetic field do this before. And the scientists say, what on earth? What on earth is happening on Earth to create this spike in the magnetic field? So they took the data and they overlaid onto a calendar of days and months. That arrow is on the graph at a point that is 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, September 11th, 2001. The first plane hit the first tower of the World Trade Center, September 11th, about 8:45 a.m. approximately. Scientists believe it took about 15 minutes for the images of the tragedy to travel around the world through the media, through the television signals and the satellites. And at 9 a.m., when the spike happened, scientists now believe that this is a spike that is the result of the collective emotion of hundreds of millions of humans feeling in their heart, not thinking, feeling the shock of the emotion, of the tragedy. And for the first time, scientists were able to document hundreds of millions of people in a moment in time sharing a heart-based experience had the power to actually shift the magnetic field of the Earth that connects and sustains all life. And the scientists said, oh my God.
You came to Romania for a conference. You came here to deliver a message. What is what you are expecting to leave behind?
Many of the things that we're talking about now, I'll be sharing with the audience, but the key is this. The world changed, and no one told us. There has been no special on the BBC network or CNN network or the Discovery Channel or the History Channel that has said to the world, looks the world in the eye and says, the world of the past that you knew 10 years ago no longer exists. And this is important for this reason. We've never had the opportunity to let that world go, to mourn and release the world of the past. So many people are clinging to the idea of the old world, and they're trying to get that world back, the world of the economy of 5 years ago. That's not possible any longer. The global debt will prevent that. The world of the inexpensive energy, the cheap energy of 10 years ago, that's not possible because we've reached the peak oil. These are just examples. The food and the water that we're now competing for in some parts of the world, the way we're solving the problems in Egypt and Iran and Syria and Israel and the West Bank, all of these things. Those are all real-life examples of precisely what we're talking about, unsustainable ways of dealing with everyday life based on science, false assumptions of science, competition, violent competition and separation. So now that those events are right in our face, we have to deal with them. We have new opportunities and new solutions, but many people simply don't know about the discoveries. So I will be sharing the new science that's so new. It's not in the textbooks, it's not in the classrooms, it's not in the mainstream media, but it's important in our lives. And it's important because it gives us the tools to adapt. Adapt, not force the world back to the way that it used to be, rather to adapt to the new normal that is emerging in healthy, thriving ways so that we can embrace the new opportunities that are happening right now. Resilience, personal resilience, and community resilience is the key, and that is part of the message that I'll be sharing.
Not everybody will have the chance to get to your conference, unfortunately, but if there's one thing that each of us can do at home, like starting from now, each of the people watching you, to change their life, or not to change their life, to adapt, or what would that be?
That's a very good question. Based upon the false science of the past that led us to believe we live in a world of separation, we each have asked ourselves a question every day, consciously or subconsciously. When we enter a relationship, a job, a career, make a big decision, the question is, what can I get from the world that exists? That's the question. What can I get? What's in it for me? Now the question must change. Science tells us we live in a world that's connected, and it's based upon cooperation. So the new question becomes, what can I give, or what can I share? What can I contribute? What can I offer to the world that's emerging? When we make that shift from what can I get from the world that exists to what can I give to the world that's emerging, it changes everything. It opens new doors of possibility. Can I just give an example?
Yes, please.
It opens new doors of possibility. We all know the economy is having a difficult time, and people are losing jobs, industries are disappearing. So I'm going to give an example along those lines. My wife and I live in a rural community in northern New Mexico in the United States. A friend of ours, in 2008, when the economy collapsed, he was building homes. His job was to build homes, ecologically friendly homes. He had a crew of about 30 people working for him. In 2008, the economy collapsed. He lost his job. All of the people he was responsible for, they had no job. He said, what am I going to do? And he asked himself, what can I give to the world that's emerging? What does the world need? He said, the world doesn't need houses anymore. They can't afford them. He said, but what they need is a way to grow food. He said, I'm a builder. But rather than building houses, I'm going to build raised modular gardens of all sizes that people can have to grow their own food. People in New York that have no yard, their garden is 1 foot by 1 foot in the kitchen.
So
counter.
do we.
Okay. People that live in big areas, we have 2 of these gardens that are 8 feet by 4 feet. They have their own watering system. They have their own heating system. They're raised above the ground. They have covers that 12 months out of the year, when the temperatures are 20 degrees below zero, the food continues to grow. And he now is building raised bed gardens to teach people how to grow their own food locally, rather than have the carbon footprint of growing the food halfway around the world, putting it in a 747, flying it across the ocean, and then trucking the food that has sometimes is contaminated. They grow their own food locally now, and they share it with their neighbors. It's building community, and he is so happy building these gardens. He will never build homes again because he feels good about what he's doing. He answered the question, what can I give to the world that's emerging? The world didn't need homes, but the world does need to grow food. So this is one example.
You know, time that doesn't exist in quantum physics has just flown. And thank you very much for your presence here.
This was a very fast interview.
Very fast,
The time went by fast.